Hey there. Today we are going to shake it up a little bit. Not only are we doing some canning, but we also are going to prepare one of my most favorite meals, chicken tortilla soup. Chicken tortilla soup is delicious, fairly simple to make. It's not really complex, and it's also very filling. For me, it's almost a comfort food, but not quite as unhealthy as most comfort foods, unless of course you go crazy with the toppings. I do want to mention that we are not going to put the tortillas or tortilla chips inside the soup before we can it. That's something that you would do when you're ready to open the can of soup, heat it up, and eat it for a meal. You would put the tortilla chips or baked tortilla pieces on top of the soup as a topping. If we were to actually put it in the jar before we canned it, it would turn really soggy and would not taste nearly as good. The first thing that we're going to do is take a look at the ingredients, then we'll start preparing it, and then we'll jump into the canning. So let's go ahead and get started. From left to right, we have boneless chicken breasts. Here I have 4 chicken breasts, and I actually sliced them in half as well so that they'll cook a little bit faster. And you could do 3 chicken breasts, that would work as well, but I like to do 4 so I can make a little bit extra, have some for dinner tonight, and also make the 7 quarts that we're going to can. We also have some onion, jalapeño, minced garlic, carrots, celery, kidney beans, and black beans. You could do just black beans or just kidney beans, whichever you prefer, or you can mix them together. Either way works and will turn out delicious. I use 2 cans of kidney beans and 1 can of black beans. We also have some crushed tomatoes, 2 cans or about 20 ounces of the rotel style tomatoes, a couple quarts of chicken broth, and then we have some spices. For the spices, we have paprika, garlic powder, salt, black pepper, dehydrated jalapeno, and that has also been powdered, chili powder, and cumin, or some people pronounce it cumin. We are going to start by adding some oil to the pan. I use avocado oil, olive oil would work as well. And after that's heated up, we're going to add in the onion. With the onion, we want it to cook until it's almost a translucent color. And once it has that translucent look, we're going to add in the garlic and the jalapeno. And then after that's cooked down a little bit, we'll go ahead and add in all of the spices. After the spices have cooked for probably about 2 minutes, we're going to add in the liquid, which we'll start with the tomatoes. So we'll add in those crushed tomatoes, the rotel style tomatoes, and then we'll finish the liquid with the chicken broth. We want to mix everything in, let it come to a boil, and then we'll add in the chicken breast. We don't want to overcook the chicken, but we do want to make sure that it gets cooked enough that it's easy to shred. And keep in mind that this chicken that I'm using, I've already thawed it out. It's come to room temperature and I sliced it in half, so it's going to cook fairly quickly. I'm only going to boil this for about 5 minutes, and then I'm going to remove the chicken, allow the liquid to come back to a boil, but I'll remove the chicken, put it into a separate bowl, and let it cool down. You can absolutely boil the chicken beforehand if that's easier for you. Maybe you have an Instant Pot or some other method that works best. I really like to boil the chicken in with the liquid that I am using for the soup, and the reason for that is that it allows the spices within the soup to season the chicken, and then also any flavors that are coming off of the chicken are going to stay in that soup as well. You can go ahead and shred the chicken by hand if you don't have a mixer or a food processor or something else that you can use to shred it. I do have a mixer, and that really helps to expedite the time, so I am going to go ahead and put the chicken into the bowl for the mixer, and then I'll just mix that up, and that will allow me to shred it a lot quicker than doing it by hand. After the chicken has been shredded, you can either return it back to the pot and allow it to absorb some more of those flavors, or keep it separate. But either way, now is a great time to go ahead and add in the rest of the ingredients into the pot. We'll let that come back to a boil, and then we'll shut the heat off. At this point, the soup is ready to eat. So You could either serve it and eat it as a meal now, or if you're wanting to can it, we can move on to the next steps. Start by adding 2 to 3 inches of water to the pressure canner. You can also add in 3 tablespoons of white distilled vinegar. This isn't required, but it does help to avoid having that white residue build up on the exterior of the jars. At this point, you can turn the heat on and allow this to start heating up while we prepare the jars. Today I ended up with quite a bit of chicken and not quite enough space in the pot. So what I'm going to do, rather than putting the chicken back in the pot, I'm going to go ahead and place it in each of the jars. And what's nice about that is that I can evenly space the chicken to make sure each one gets the same amount. Now we can begin adding the soup into the jars. As I'm ladling this, I'm actually using a ladle that helps to separate out the liquid, again, so I can try to get an even amount of food into each of the jars, and then we'll ladle the liquid in to fill it up to the top. When I say top, I mean about 1 inch of headspace is what we'll need. So right about to this rim, but we'll check that with the headspace tool before we put the lids on. Now we can add the liquid, filling almost to the top, leaving about 1 inch of headspace. If you taste test it and it tastes like it needs a little bit more salt, you can go ahead and add that in. I did add half a teaspoon of canning salt to each one of these. Before we take the rest of the soup away, we want to make sure we remove any air bubbles that are stuck within each of the jars. So we can use this debubbler tool. It's also used for measuring, so you'll see that we'll check the headspace on these as well. The bubbles have been removed, so now we will check the headspace. If any of the jars are low, then we can go ahead and add some liquid. So in this case, this one is a little bit low, so we can add it. If any of them are high, then we can remove some of the liquid. The headspace is good, so we can go ahead and take some white distilled vinegar and a paper towel and wipe the rims to make sure we get any residue off the top of those. And then we'll place the lids on, the bands will just be finger tight. Then we'll get them into the pressure cooker. We'll place the lid on, tighten it down, and get it going. I'm ready to drop these in the canner, so I'll go ahead and place in one of the racks at the bottom of the canner to protect the jars, and then I'll put these in there. With this pressure canner, I have a metal lid, so it's a metal seal, and in order to get it to seal properly, you do need to add a little bit of olive oil to the rim of the pot to make sure that it seals properly. Now we'll place on the lid, we'll tighten down the wing nuts, and we're going to wait until the steam starts to vent out of the vent pipe. Once it starts doing that, we're going to set a 10-minute timer. After the 10 minutes are up, we can go ahead and place our weight. For our altitude, we need a 10-pound weight, so we'll go ahead and place that on. And then we're going to wait to hear that first jiggle. After the first jiggle, we can set a 90-minute timer. These are quarts, so this recipe calls for 90 minutes. If we're doing pints, that's 75 minutes. But we'll go ahead and set our 90-minute timer, and we'll come back when that's done. The 90-minute timer is up, so we're going to go ahead and remove the pot from the heat, or if you have a gas stove, just turn the heat off. And we want to let this start cooling down. We do not want to remove the weight until the pressure gauge has reached 0. been about 30 minutes and the pressure gauge has dropped down to 0 pounds, so we can go ahead and remove the weight, remove the wing nuts, and then we're going to remove the lid and make sure that we lift it away from our face to make sure none of that steam comes back and burns us. Now we're going to remove the jars from the pot, place them on a towel, not directly on the cold counter, and we're going to let those cool for approximately 8 to 12 hours. After the jars are cooled, we're going to clean them up, remove the bands, label them with what it is that we canned, the date, including the month and the year, and then we can store them in a dark, relatively cool place for up to 1 year. One of my favorite ways to serve this is, of course, with some tortilla chips that have been crushed over the top of the soup. You could also do regular tortillas that have been baked or fried and then cut up in little pieces. I also like to add on some cheese. You could squeeze some lime over the soup as well, and that's delicious. Onions, a little bit of sour cream, and top it with some cilantro. This concludes our video on making chicken tortilla soup and also canning it. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please leave them down in the comments below, and we will see you again soon.